Imagine a horror saga that teased the chilling possibility of the Antichrist infiltrating the highest levels of global power, potentially even ascending to the presidency of the United States. Yet, it ultimately fumbled the ball, leaving fans like me yearning for what could have been an epic franchise. As a huge admirer of The Omen, I want to clarify right away. My enthusiasm is laser-focused on the 1976 masterpiece directed by Richard Donner, centered on the demonic child known as the Antichrist. Sure, I have a soft spot for the initial two follow-ups as well, but I'm utterly unimpressed by the dreadful 2006 remake, which felt like a lazy rehash. Even the First Omen managed to be a step up, but honestly, nothing in the series has matched the electrifying promise of that groundbreaking original. And this is the part most people miss. The way it hinted at a dark, inevitable path that the later films simply refused to explore. Let's delve into what made that First Omen so extraordinarily effective. While it's often hailed as a fresh concept, and in many ways it was, its journey to the screen was undeniably influenced by the massive success of 1973's The Exorcist. A film that not only dominated the horror genre, but became one of the best-selling movies ever, captivating audiences worldwide. This sparked a frenzy in Hollywood for devil-themed stories, but producer Harvey Bernhard stood out with his innovative vision. A seasoned Hollywood figure known for hits like the blaxploitation classic The Mac, a genre of films from the 1970s that celebrated black culture and action, often with over-the-top villains and heroes, Bernhard nurtured the seed of an idea and enlisted screenwriter David Seltzer to develop it into a full script over the course of a year. The core premise was brilliant. An American diplomat in London discovers his newborn son is none other than the Antichrist, born from the devil himself via a jackal in a twisted supernatural birth. But here's where it gets controversial. Enter Richard Donner, who at that point was far from the big-name director he'd become later in his career. He was a seasoned TV pro with a handful of modest films under his belt, including Salt and Pepper, a lighthearted spy comedy starring Sammy Davis Jr. and Peter Lawford. You might recall the iconic trailer line, "I'm Pepper, he's Salt." For Donner, this was his big break into major cinema, and he initially toyed with keeping things ambiguous, leaving viewers to wonder if the boy Damien was truly Satan's offspring. Yet the final film dispensed with subtlety, making it crystal clear that Damien was the Antichrist, complete with eerie symbolism like the number 666 from the Book of Revelation in the Bible, which depicts apocalyptic visions of the end times and the mark of the beast. This number even became more widely recognized in pop culture, thanks to the movie's popularity. Beyond Donner and the script, two key elements transformed The Omen into a timeless classic: the stellar ensemble cast and the haunting soundtrack. Leading the pack was Gregory Peck, a massive get for the role of Robert Thorn, the diplomat who unknowingly becomes the father of evil. Peck was a legend from Hollywood's golden age, though he had faded somewhat in relevance during that era's shifts. He'd previously portrayed one of cinema's most beloved fathers in To Kill a Mockingbird, so casting him as a man grappling with the horror of trying to destroy his own son added a layer of tragic irony and depth. His sophisticated acting style also uplifted the entire supporting cast, including Lee Remick as Catherine Thorn, Damien's adoptive mother who believes he's her biological child, and actors like David Warner, Leo McKern, Billy Whitelaw, plus the eerie young Harvey Stevens as Damien, a real handful on set, reportedly causing chaos by even kicking Donner during his audition. Then there's Jerry Goldsmith's unforgettable score, filled with choral voices and Latin chants that amplified the terror. The film became a massive hit, ranking as the sixth highest-grossing movie of 1976, despite initial critical backlash. Many reviewers found it offensive, especially for casting an icon like Peck in such a dark tale. Time has been kinder, and Peck's nuanced performance as an older man rediscovering fatherhood, only to face utter devastation, remains a poignant highlight. The movie's success even popularized biblical concepts like 666 as the mark of the beast, making ancient prophecies feel disturbingly modern. The original ended on a cliffhanger, with Damien seemingly poised for adoption by the President and First Lady, hinting at his ascent to ultimate power. But the first sequel, Damien, Omen 2, backed away from that thrilling trajectory. It depicted Damien as a teenager, and while it had some strengths, it lacked the polish of the first film. Seltzer didn't return for the screenplay, and Donner was off directing Superman. Instead, it came across as a lower-budget affair, with Damien raised by a family friend of the Thorns, portrayed by another fading Golden Age star, William Holden. Holden brought solid work to the role, though not with Peck's intensity. Interesting touches included Damien wrestling with his malevolent fate, a humanizing element, and a network of supporters aiding his rise. The gore was even more visceral in spots, like a spine-tingling death beneath a frozen lake, or a character graphically severed in two. Goldsmith returned for the score, but the film only grossed about half of the original, though it was profitable enough for a third installment, The Omen 3, The Final Conflict, and this is where they really dropped the ball. In this entry, we see adult Damien climbing the ladders of influence, which sounds promising on paper. But they prematurely ended his story by killing him off before he could approach the presidency, cutting short a potentially legendary series and leaving audiences frustrated, like being teased and then denied. That said, the third film nailed one aspect, casting the ideal Damien in a young Sam Neill and bringing back Goldsmith. Everything else fell flat, and the franchise fizzled out after that, except for when news broke of a 2006 remake. I wasn't entirely opposed. After all, the saga had untapped potential. But I underestimated how poorly director John Moore handled it, essentially copying the original scene by scene without adding any flair or substance. They even recycled David Seltzer's script verbatim. The casting was a disaster. Julia Stiles seemed miscast replacing Lee Remick, and Liev Schreiber was too youthful for his part. Though today, it fit perfectly. Mia Farrow was a bright spot as Billy Whitelaw's character, but Marco Beltrami's updated score of Goldsmith's work was a letdown. Overall, it was a stinky effort that still turned a profit, mercifully without spawning sequels. That being said, I found the First Omen somewhat enjoyable. While a prequel felt unnecessary, it leaned into politically charged themes, portraying the church as complicit with Satan and embracing anti-patriarchy vibes popular when it released. Directed stylishly by Arkasha Stevenson, with Nell Tiger-Free shining as the lead, it cleverly referenced Gregory Peck as Robert Thorn. I wish it had succeeded financially, allowing the franchise to skip the second and third films and pivot to Thorn's political rise. Picture this. Damien Thorn, now in his 50s per the timeline, as a presidential Antichrist wielding nuclear power. With an actor like Michael Shannon in the role, it could terrify on a whole new level, perhaps uncomfortably mirroring real-world fears. Does this sound like a recipe for horror gold? You're too risky. What if the sequels had embraced that bold path instead of shying away? Do you agree that avoiding the presidency plot was a missed opportunity, or do you think it would have made the series too politically charged? Share your opinions in the comments. I'd love to hear if you think a remake faithful to this alternate vision could revive the franchise.